The grand hall glittered with golden chandeliers, but the cold air between them was thicker than any decoration. James Hawthorne, the billionaire heir to a vast fortune, stood near the marble altar, his gaze sharp and distant. His plan was clear: marry the woman no one wanted, the unloved single mom, and use it as the ultimate revenge against those who had wronged him. But when he saw her, Emily, everything shifted. Emily entered the hall hesitantly, clutching her worn handbag, her eyes heavy with exhaustion and silent sorrow. She wasn't the glamorous bride anyone expected at a wedding like this. Her dress was simple, modest, and her hair pulled back tightly, as if hiding the weight of countless sleepless nights and burdens she carried alone. Their eyes met for a moment. A flicker of something unspoken passed between them. James noticed the subtle tremble in her hands, the raw vulnerability beneath her tired exterior. She wasn't just a pawn for his revenge. She was a person, real, fragile, and so unlike anyone he had ever met. He could feel an unexpected flutter deep in his chest, but he pushed it down, focusing on his cold purpose. Still, curiosity had taken root. That day, amidst the glitz and expectation, a strange twist of fate pulled two broken souls together. Neither knew what the future held, but the first glance had sealed their uneasy connection, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, pain, and forgiveness. Days after their sudden wedding, the walls between James and Emily began to quietly crumble. Not with grand declarations, but in small, unexpected moments. James watched her from across the room as she gently rocked her baby to sleep, humming a soft lullaby she had taught herself to soothe the sleepless nights. Her exhaustion was evident in the dark circles under her eyes, but there was a fierce protectiveness in her every movement that stirred something unfamiliar in James. Respect, maybe even admiration. Emily, on the other hand, had braced herself for cold indifference or cruelty. Instead, James's silence was punctuated by brief, thoughtful gestures, a cup of tea left by her side, an unexpected smile when she least expected it, and rare moments when his eyes softened just for her. They shared quiet breakfasts, where words felt unnecessary. Their conversations were often simple, yet filled with an honesty neither had expected. Slowly, she began to let him see the parts of herself hidden behind guarded smiles, the dreams she had once held, the fears she fought daily, and the hopes that kept her going. James, too, found his carefully built walls breaking. He was drawn not just to her resilience, but to the tender moments of vulnerability she allowed him to witness. The laughter shared over a clumsy dance in the kitchen, the whispered confessions during sleepless nights, the way their fingers brushed and lingered longer than needed, all wove a fragile thread of connection between them. Neither spoke aloud what was growing between them, but in those quiet exchanges, a new kind of bond took root. A bond that promised something beyond revenge, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. Truth has a way of slipping through even the strongest masks, especially when the heart begins to trust. It was a rainy afternoon when Emily stumbled upon a letter James had carelessly left on his study desk. She hadn't meant to snoop. She was only placing a clean shirt inside. But the elegant handwriting in the words, "Your plan for revenge," stopped her in her tracks. Her heart pounded as she read. The letter, written months ago by James's business partner, revealed a cruel plan. Marrying her hadn't been a spontaneous act of kindness. It had been carefully calculated. Revenge, humiliation, a way to strike back at someone else. Someone Emily didn't even know. Emily felt the air sucked from the room. Her knees weakened, her breath unsteady. Everything she had started to believe, the warmth, the kindness, the spark of hope, now felt like a lie, a cruel, twisted lie. When James returned that evening, soaked from the rain, he saw it in her eyes. The way she didn't look at him, the way her hands trembled while she held their daughter. "Emily," he said cautiously, "what's wrong?" She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. Instead, she quietly placed the letter in front of him. James stared at it, and for the first time, the confident, controlled man looked ashamed. "I never meant for it to go this far," he confessed, voice low. "At first, yes, it was a plan, but I didn't expect you. I didn't expect to care. Tears welled in her eyes, not from shock anymore, but from pain. You used me, she whispered. You used me and my child for a game. James stepped forward, desperate. I started this for the wrong reason. But what's between us now, it's real. You have to believe that. Emily's heart was torn between fury and a strange, lingering ache. Because deep down, despite the betrayal, a part of her had started to believe in them. That part was now shattered. She turned away from him that night, clutching her baby close. For the first time since the wedding, they slept in separate rooms. But secrets once revealed cannot be buried again. And both knew that the truth had changed everything. He married her for revenge. But what if his heart was changing faster than his plan? The honeymoon suite was everything a fairy tale promised. Roses, chandeliers, and golden silence. But inside, tension crackled like a storm about to break. Emma sat at the edge of the velvet-lined bed, clutching the hem of her ivory gown with trembling fingers. Across the room, Damien stood near the window, still in his tuxedo, watching the city lights below as if searching for answers only the night could offer. The wedding had gone exactly as he planned. A perfect spectacle. The media had eaten it up. Billionaire Marries former single mom in surprise ceremony. But inside, nothing felt victorious. Emma turned to face him. Why me, Damien? Out of all the women who would have killed to wear this ring, why choose me? Her voice wasn't angry. It was honest, wounded, and somehow that hurt him more. He swallowed hard, keeping his back turned. Because you were easy to use. There. The words were meant to slice, to build distance. But the moment they left his mouth, they sounded uglier than he expected. He heard her breath hitch, not in shock, but in confirmation. She had known something wasn't right. She just wanted him to admit it. I see, she whispered, standing. Well, thank you for the honesty, Mr. Blackwood. She walked past him, but he grabbed her wrist instinctively. Emma, don't! Her eyes brimmed with tears, but her voice was strong. Don't pretend there's anything real here. You got what you wanted. Your headlines, your revenge. I'm not sure who you're trying to hurt more, me or yourself. He froze. Her words struck too close to truth. This had started as revenge against his ex-fiancée, the woman who left him for a senator and publicly humiliated him. He had picked Emma, quiet, unnoticed, burdened with a child, thinking she'd be easy to manipulate. But she hadn't been. She had smiled despite the whispers. She had held her son like a queen with a crown. She had walked down that aisle with dignity he didn't expect. And he had begun to see something he hadn't planned on. Her strength. Now facing her pain he caused, was unbearable. Emma pulled her wrist free and walked out of the room, her wedding dress swaying behind her like a flag of surrender. But Damien knew it wasn't defeat she carried. It was distance. And suddenly, the man who had everything felt utterly alone. He had built walls to protect himself. So why did it hurt when she stopped trying to climb them? The grand penthouse suite felt emptier than ever, despite its crystal chandeliers and sweeping skyline views. Damien stood in the dimly lit living room, staring at the untouched wedding cake on the silver tray. He hadn't slept. He hadn't moved. He kept hearing her footsteps leaving, the soft click of the door, the silence that followed. Emma hadn't come back. She had left behind her wedding bouquet on the couch. Its petals were already starting to wilt. He should have been relieved. This was what he wanted. Distance, detachment, control. She was never supposed to matter. Just a means to an end. A symbol to the world that he had moved on. Stronger and more powerful than ever. Then why did his chest feel tight, like something precious had been ripped out? Downstairs in the guest suite where Emma had taken refuge, the silence was just as loud. She sat cross-legged on the bed, holding her son Micah in her lap. The toddler was asleep, his tiny hand curled into the fabric of her robe. She brushed a tear off her cheek, then another. She had known this marriage was strange. Damien's sudden proposal, the rushed wedding, it had all felt surreal. But when he had looked at her during the vows, when he had knelt to kiss Micah's head in front of the guests, some small, hopeful part of her had started to believe it might turn into something real. Now she realized it had all been for show. Maybe she had been foolish. Maybe broken women like her didn't get fairy tales. She looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Mascara smudged, shoulders slumped, a bride in name only. Her heart whispered, "Leave now, before he destroys more of you." But as she looked down at Micah, she hesitated. Was it fair to rip her son out of stability again? Was Damien just cruel, or was he broken too? Upstairs, Damien finally sank onto the couch and buried his face in his hands. He didn't know what scared him more, that she might leave or that he might want her to stay. He had played with people before, used them like pawns in his high-stakes world of revenge and reputation. But Emma, she was different. She wasn't part of that game. And maybe that was why he didn't know how to win her. For the first time in a long time, Damien Blackwood doubted everything. His plan, his pride, and most of all, himself. Just when she was ready to walk away, he reached out, not with power, but with something far more dangerous: vulnerability. The next morning, rain fell gently against the tall windows of the penthouse. The sky was pale and overcast, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Emma was in the kitchen, quietly making toast for Micah. She moved carefully, avoiding the expensive marble counters like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Her heart was heavy and her eyes swollen from crying all night. She had made a decision. She would leave today. She couldn't live in a house built on secrets. Just as she buttered the last slice of toast, she heard footsteps. She turned slowly. Damien stood in the doorway. No suit, no cold expression. Just a man in a plain black t-shirt and jeans, barefoot, with sleep still tugging at his face. His usual armor was gone. His eyes, they looked tired, human. "I didn't know you liked honey on toast," he said softly, glancing at the plate. Emma didn't answer. She just placed the knife down and started wiping her hands with a dish towel. "I wasn't honest with you," he said, his voice cracked slightly, "about why I married you." That made her stop. She turned, arms crossed, face unreadable. "I figured that part out." He took a cautious step forward. "I wanted to hurt someone, and I used you to do it. That wasn't fair to you, or your son." She looked away, her throat tightening. He moved closer. But something happened. Somewhere between the rehearsed smile at the altar and watching you fall asleep beside Micah on that couch, I stopped pretending. I started seeing you. Really seeing you. Emma bit her lip, trying not to believe it. She couldn't afford hope, not again. "You're strong, Emma," he said. "Stronger than anyone I've ever met. And I don't want to keep living behind walls." His voice faltered. Micah peeked around the corner just then, rubbing his eyes. Damien knelt, holding out his hand. "Hey, buddy." The little boy blinked sleepily, then waddled over and wrapped his arms around Damien's neck. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. The sight unraveled her. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Damien said, his voice muffled in Micah's tiny shoulder. "But I want to try." Emma stepped back, overwhelmed. Her chest was a war zone of emotions: pain, anger, relief, and something soft and terrifying, a flicker of hope. Could love bloom from such a broken place? Could a man hell-bent on revenge learn how to rebuild? She wasn't sure, but as she watched Micah laugh for the first time in days while Damien spun him in the air, she knew one thing. She wasn't ready to give up. He never believed in vows, but that night, he made one. No audience, no altar, just his heart, trembling in her hands. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. No thunder of Damien's phone calls. No ticking heels across marble floors. Just the distant hum of the city outside and the soft lull of the dishwasher in the kitchen. Emma sat on the balcony wrapped in a thick sweater, a mug of tea cradled between her palms. She watched the sky turn from silver to violet, the city lights beginning to twinkle like stars. Damien stepped out behind her. No suit, no bravado, just him. "Micah's asleep," he said, his voice gentle. "He asked if I could read to him tonight." Emma nodded. "He likes your voice." He sat beside her but didn't speak right away. The silence between them was soft now, not sharp. "I used to think love was just a transaction," he said, looking out at the horizon. something you buy, manipulate, or win. But you, his voice broke a little, you've ruined that belief. Emma smiled faintly, more sadness than joy. That's not love either, Damien. It's not a game you lose or win. It's trust, showing up, being seen. He turned to her. His eyes weren't guarded anymore. Then let me try again. No tricks, no revenge. Just me. She didn't answer right away. The pain wasn't gone, but something had shifted. He was letting go of the man he used to be, slowly, messily, and showing her the man he could become. I don't want grand gestures, she said softly. Just truth. No more hiding, no more pretending. Damien nodded. I promise you that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note. I wrote this the day after our wedding. I never meant for you to read it, but maybe you should. He handed it to her, and she opened it slowly. In his messy scrawl, it read, if I could undo the lies, I would, but I can't. So instead, I'll learn how to become a man worthy of her, even if it takes my whole life. Emma's eyes welled up again, but this time it wasn't from sorrow. It was from something deeper, healing. Damien reached out, not to hold her, but to let her decide, and after a long, shaky breath, she placed her hand in his. It wasn't a fairy tale moment. No magic, no music, just two broken people daring to try again. And sometimes that's the most powerful vow of all. She expected pain, not laughter, but joy crept in like morning light, slow, certain, and impossible to ignore. The next morning began like any other, but something in the air had shifted. Emma woke up to the scent of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee, not from a maid, not from routine, but from Damien. In the kitchen, he stood awkwardly in front of the stove, sleeves rolled up, holding a spatula like it was a foreign object. There was a smear of flour across his cheek. Micah sat at the counter, giggling uncontrollably. Mom, he's burning the pancakes, but he says it's experimental cooking. Emma leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a soft smile playing on her lips. Are you trying to poison us, Mr. Steele? She teased. Damien turned, mock offended. Excuse me, I am a visionary. You just don't appreciate crispy edges. She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. It filled the room with warmth. Micah's eyes lit up. Damien's hands stilled, and in that small kitchen something rare and beautiful bloomed. Joy, not the kind that comes with diamonds or sweeping gestures, but the kind that comes with burnt pancakes and messy aprons. The kind that's built slowly, lovingly, in moments no one else sees. Later that day, they took Micah to the park. Damien, in his designer shoes, tried to push the swing, but ended up with sand in places he didn't know existed. Emma laughed so hard she cried again, this time from sheer happiness. On the way back, it started to rain unexpectedly. They ran for cover under a tree, soaking wet, breathless. Damien looked at her, mascara smudged, hair tangled, her arms around Micah, and said, I never knew chaos could look like home. Emma didn't respond with words. She leaned in and kissed his cheek. It wasn't a kiss of passion or forgiveness. It was a kiss that said, I see you trying, and I'm beginning to believe it. Sometimes joy doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it slips in when you're too busy living, laughing, and learning how to love again. Love was easy in laughter, but could it survive when silence fell, when past wounds reopened, and when trust was put to trial? The glow of their early joy didn't fade, it deepened. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks began to stretch into months, reality crept in like slow-moving shadows. Damien tried to adapt. He rearranged meetings, attended school events, even learned how to braid Micah's hair from a video online, though he still struggled with tying shoelaces. But the world he came from, the empire he'd built, began to push back. His board was growing impatient. Why haven't you filed for divorce yet? One investor hissed across a mahogany table. This marriage was a tactic, not a future, another reminded him. And then there was the media. Headlines screamed betrayal. CEO abandons heiress for housemaid. Single mom gold digs her way into billionaire's bed. Emma stopped checking her phone. She stopped smiling as often. She began to retreat, not out of anger, but fear. Fear of being a mistake in his life. Fear that maybe everything she was starting to believe wasn't real. One night she found an envelope tucked into his coat pocket. It was a letter, formal, cold, petitioning for annulment. It was dated from months ago but never sent. Emma didn't ask. She simply stared at the paper, her hands trembling. When Damien walked in, she didn't speak, just held it up. He froze. "I didn't send it," he whispered, "but you wrote it." Silence filled the room like thunder. He took a step closer. "That was before I knew what I had. Before Micah called me dad without thinking. Before I knew what your laugh sounds like when you're reading bedtime stories." Tears welled in her eyes. "And what now? When they pull you back? When you remember I was just part of your revenge?" Damien knelt in front of her. "I remember that you are the only truth I've ever stumbled into. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was honest. In the days that followed, they fought. They avoided. They started over. Again and again. Because love isn't built in grand gestures. It's tested in every small choice to stay. And with each test, through storm and stillness, Emma and Damien found themselves choosing each other. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Because love that lasts is the one that's willing to fight. Sometimes the greatest chapters of life begin not with certainty, but with a trembling step into the unknown, hand in hand, heart to heart. The crisp morning sun poured through the open windows of their new home. Not a mansion, not a penthouse, but a house with creaky floors, a small garden, and walls echoing laughter instead of loneliness. Damien had made a decision. He stepped down from the board of his company, not forever, but enough to prove something. To himself, to Emma, to Micah, that they weren't just a season in his life. They were his life. Emma, hesitant at first, agreed to the move. She still carried scars, moments where she doubted her place, doubted his sincerity. But Damien, day by day, was relentless in quiet ways, packing school lunches, leaving handwritten notes on the bathroom mirror, reading business books aloud to Micah at bedtime because he liked the voice. They rebuilt their world on simple joys. Emma started volunteering at a local shelter for single moms, helping women just like her. Micah joined a local soccer team and insisted on calling Damien coach, even when he wasn't. There were moments of relapse, fear, flashbacks, the weight of who they once were, but there were also moments of renewal. One morning, Emma found a tiny box on the kitchen counter. Inside was a new ring, not flashy, not expensive, but engraved with the words, "This time, by choice." Damien didn't ask this time. He didn't kneel. He simply said, "Will you start again with me?" No motives, no revenge, just us. Emma didn't answer with words. She leaned in, kissed him softly, whispered, "I already have." Their second wedding was private, in a field with wildflowers. Just Micah, a few friends, and a breeze carrying laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, Emma wasn't the crying bride at the altar. She was the woman who walked forward with hope in her heart. And the man who once used her for revenge now held her hand with reverence. Because in choosing each other, again and again, they'd rewritten their fate. Love demands its highest price when the heart must choose between holding on and letting go. Life, as they had come to know it, wasn't always gentle. Just when Emma and Damien thought their troubles were behind them, a sudden storm swept through their fragile peace. Micah fell seriously ill. Doctors were uncertain, their prognosis grim. Damien's world shattered, but amidst the fear and uncertainty, a decision had to be made, a choice that would test every fiber of their love. Damien was offered a dangerous business deal, one that could save Micah's life financially, but required risking everything they had rebuilt, their trust, their home, and even Emma's faith in him. Emma, seeing the desperation in Damien's eyes, silently vowed she would stand by him, no matter the cost. Night after night, they weighed their options, whispered prayers in the dark, and clung to hope like a lifeline. In the most heart-wrenching moment, Damien made the ultimate sacrifice. He gave up the very empire he had built, the wealth, the power, the legacy, for the chance to keep his family whole. Emma watched him walk away from the life he once craved, and tears filled her eyes. Tears not of sorrow, but of awe. Because true love, she realized, wasn't about riches or revenge. It was about sacrifice. Giving up what you love most so those you love can live. In that sacrifice, their bond deepened beyond words. Micah's health slowly improved, each smile a testament to the price they had paid. And Damien and Emma, though stripped of everything but each other, found a treasure more valuable than gold, a love forged in sacrifice, unbreakable and eternal. When all the pieces fall into place, a new melody of peace and hope begins to play. The chaos had passed, the storms had settled. What remained was a quiet, tender peace, hard-earned and deeply cherished. Emma and Damien stood side by side, looking out over the life they had rebuilt from ashes. Their home was modest now, far from the grandeur Damien once knew, but it was filled with laughter, warmth, and the soft glow of healing hearts. Micah's laughter echoed through the halls, a sound more precious than any fortune. The struggles they had endured had woven their souls tighter, creating a harmony only true love could compose. Damien, once a man ruled by pride and vengeance, had found humility in loss and grace in forgiveness. Emma, once broken and fearful, had blossomed into a woman strong enough to love without walls. Together they dreamed again of a future built on trust, kindness, and the simple joy of belonging. As the sun set behind them, casting a golden light over their little family, Damien gently took Emma's hand. No grand declarations were needed. Their eyes spoke volumes. They had weathered the storm, faced the impossible, and emerged not just as survivors, but as soulmates bound forever. In the stillness of that moment, they knew the greatest victory was not wealth or power, but the peace that comes when two hearts finally sing in perfect harmony.